Thank you so much, Richard. You spoke about dynamic, you spoke about prediction analytics. Prediction analytics, as General Gimondo said, is based on the collection and the process of experiences. So, just because we have the coffee break very, very quickly, I would propose to stay still with NATO and to continue with the Unified Vision 2014 that is one of the exercise and experience that is a sort of collector generation of experiences to be analyzed. Richard spoke about NIAG. Just to clarify, NIAG is a NATO Industrial Advisory Group. Is a NATO organization within the NATO structure, but is the voice of industries in NATO. This is important because there are other organizations that are with an N before, for example, NCOIC, but this is not NATO, and this is important. I have the list of what NIAG is doing on the left side of this. I leave the floor to Rob Munday, that is the director of the Unified Vision 14 NIAG Working Group 177, and he had a long experience on NATO activities, and he was also the director of Unified Vision 2012, as where NIAG was working for the assessment of the exercise. Please. Please remain in 20 minutes because otherwise the coffee is cold.
Okay. Chairman, Generals, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My presentation is due to finish to lead you into coffee at 10:10, so I thank you for your attention. Okay, as you heard from General Gimondo, he was setting the scene in the longer term, and Richard Whitstruck then tried to show a little bit further out. What I will try and do is to sort of bridge the gap and to show where we're heading in the next 5 to 6, 7 years. Okay, as you heard, I have been involved with NIAGS. I was a Royal Air Force officer for 40 years and 10 months. I retired and during that time I was a technician, a pilot and an engineer, and I retired in 2006, and I've been involved in a series of NIAG studies, and the two that are relevant to us today are Study Group 164, which was looking at Unified Vision 2012, and Study Group 177, which is looking at Unified Vision 2014, which will take place in Ireland in May next year. Okay, so I already covered the introduction. I won't waste any more time on that. I'll just briefly touch on the experiences that we gained from UV12. And this, for NIAG, is a slight departure from the traditional studies. NIAG studies have very much in the past been feasibility studies, looking at particular topics of interest that the various CNAD main armament groups see as particular issues that they want looking at. The Study Group 164 and 177 are going more to integration and coordination in the major NATO trials. So it's a move for industry to actually get more engaged at the coalface and to help the operational user. I'll touch briefly on the NATO Joint ISR initiative and to put what we're doing for UV14 into context. I'll then just dwell a little bit on 2014. I'll talk about the NIAG Study Group 177 and tell you what we're doing as industry to help and assist the trial. And then there won't be questions because that's not the way we're working, but I will have the opportunity in the margins in coffee and over lunch to follow up on things that you might want to do. Okay, so I'll just very quickly run down the lessons learned from Unified Vision. I think with some exceptions, technically, we now can manage individual types of products. So we can manage images, we can manage FMV, we can manage GMTI, but they all tend to come down stovepipes. And the big challenge ahead of us now is to actually work out how we can take this disparate information, how we can look at the correlation of that information. People talk about fusion. It's a very, you know, it means different things to different people. But it's a case of taking this disparate information and improving the final intelligence output that's fed back to the operator. There were some standard implementation issues, particularly with metadata and the completion of the metadata, which is key to interoperability, because everyone needs to know where the image is in time, in space, and releasability and all that sort of thing to improve the flow of information between all the members of the alliance. We need to provide training and tools to exploit these products, and this is the multi-intelligence, which is the next step that we need to take. We heard about the TTPs and the SOPs. NATO doesn't have any TTPs and SOPs. What happens in theatre is an individual, for instance, a collection manager, has his own way of doing the monitoring of the collection. And he then, when he gets replaced by perhaps another nationality, he says, this is what I do, and the guy taking over says, yes, I can work with that, or so on and so forth. Or he says, no, I use my own system. Boom. And so there is no standard TTPs. But what we're trying to do now for UV14 is to take the TTPs that have been developed by the MAGIC community that you've already heard about, and to use those as a basis on which we can try and build to have some common procedures. The harmonization of the core metadata is very important, and there's an activity going on to actually do some metadata harmonization and to identify a core set of maybe 10 or 15 particular items, like the georeference, like the releasability, security policy, the time. And if everyone can agree that those are filled in, it's that first step towards being able to exchange products, and everyone will understand what that product actually means in terms of where it is in time and space. And then we need to continue to increase the number of products that can be ingested into the coalition shared data server. At the moment, it can only handle some of the products, so that needs to be continued to work. The mass reporting, we've heard about that. There's some very useful intelligence that needs to be fed in there, and that needs to be worked into some form of reporting. There was a lot of use made of JChat rather than having some formal method of sharing that information. There needs to be some form of risk mitigation, and there are a number of risk mitigation exercises planned for 2014 where nations can test out their standard compliance so that hopefully on the day it's close towards a plug and play. But as we heard earlier, just because it's standard compliant doesn't necessarily mean that it will work on the day. And I think General Giamondo touched on that. And then finally, we need to work to create a full suite of test tools to enable nations and to enable industry as they develop systems to be able to test their various standard compliances. All aimed at improving interoperability. Right, so the NATO JISR initiative, you're all aware, and it was mentioned on an earlier presentation. In the Ottawa summit, it was the second priority for NATO, was joint ISR. A joint ISR capability manager has been appointed, area manager, Mr. Ludwig de Camps in the Defence Investment Division in NATO headquarters, and he's leading this joint ISR initiative. There are 3 development pillars. One, and these again you've heard about already this morning, one is training, one is procedures, and one is network. And this is the ISR roadmap. It's changed slightly, but it still shows the 3 IPOCs, which is basically where we are now, what can we insert immediately, and then looking forward to 2013 and MAGEX 13, and then looking forward to 2014, which is UV14. which will actually include MAGIX 14. So the MAGIX community and the joint ISR community are coming together, which is a very positive step. It doesn't end there, though. This is only the first sort of stage, and it drives towards NRF 2016. But even then, there's still going to need to be some continued spiral development to improve and to bring in some of the technologies that you heard about, cloud computing, stream computing, and the service-oriented architecture, and the federated mission network. So these are the three spirals. I won't dwell on that, but basically it's Unified Vision 2014 is showing how we're moving towards NRF 2016, which has been taken as the target for all of this, and then looking to have a joint ISR initial operational capability around the time of NRF 2016. So I won't dwell too much on this, but the training pillars, they're looking at individual training, collective training, time-sensitive targeting, improvements to collective training, and all the procedures. And there's a series of 19 work packages, which I've picked the main ones out of. Obviously developing common SOPs, the TTPs, taking the MAGIC 2 TTPs as a starting point, as a baseline. CCR IRM documentation, the AJP21 on procedures, continue to refine that. And the network pillar is looking at the architecture, and NCIA are developing a target architecture for UV14. The Future Mission Network, that's actually now changed its name to the Federated Mission Network for the reasons that you heard from Richard. The joining criteria, joining and exit in criteria. Metadata harmonization I've already touched on, and the federated NIA test and certification. This is a standard compliance piece, and there's an initiative from within the joint ISR capability group to develop a federation of various test and certification facilities that can be networked and used for standard compliance testing. The intelligence collection management tool that was developed, it was never sent down to theatre because they didn't have the spare time to start playing with it and trialling it out. It wasn't intuitive to use. It has been modified, and it will be further modified before it's looked at in detail during UV14. And CSD procurement, they're looking at, there is one or two CSDs around the NATO that they need to be modified and fed into the overall network. Okay, so let's look then at 2014. There are 6 JISR high-level goals. And the first one is, and these are not necessarily in priority order, but the first one is to provide an assessment on where the standard compliance test and validation capability is by 2014. This is both processes and tools. And the idea is that the system will go through some form of testing, and then a certificate will be provided to detail which of the particular profiles the system complies with. We will be providing a proof of concept of the JISR operational and technical architectures, and an assessment of the JISR network connectivity and the workflows throughout the whole of the network. So this is looking at end-to-end from the initial request or the initial product coming down from the sensor. Does it turn up at the right place, at the right time, for the right person? And one of the things that I've been tasked to do is to bring together all of the objectives for UV14. And as part of that, I'm getting all of the objective owners to draw activity diagrams which show where their products start from, which sensor or which process they start from, and to start to think where their products will actually go. Is it going to be part of the COP? Is it going to go as a report to somebody? Or where is it going to end up? Because during UV12, it was very compartmentalized, and particular groups, all they were concerned about was taking something in, processing it, and throwing it out of the door. They weren't thinking further downstream as to who was going to be the user of this particular product. And so I'm trying to get them to think a little bit outside the box so that we can continue to work on the better flow of information through the system. I've got to provide an assessment of the available ISR exploitation and collection management tools. That's obviously the intelligence collection management tool and other tools that are available. Provide an assessment of the interoperability between Magic 1 and Magic 2. There will be a period of time of several years where there will be a mixture of Magic 1 and Magic 2 coalition shared data servers. What we need to identify is the backward compatibility. 5 minutes? Right. Provide an assessment of generic TTPs and recommend improvements. And finally, validate the interoperability between NATO and national contributions to NRF 16, where these are participating in the trial and are known to form part of the NRF 16 setup. And then ACO are looking at two things: time-sensitive targeting, that we've talked about already, and so this is a very specific one, looking at SIGINT within the CWOP. But as you heard earlier, we're trying to look at this in an operationally realistic environment. That's the planning cycle. You can see where we are today, about halfway towards the trial, and there'll be a first impression report at the end of July, which I've been tasked to write, and then a final report about this time next year. Okay, this is the command relationship diagram, and we're basically trying to get all the various operational cells. They will either be there will be participants who are actually playing in these roles. Some of them will be white-carded, and some of them will be remote from national cells, remote from Ireland. Okay, so Study Group 177, there are two work streams. One is looking at demonstrations, and really my role here is to facilitate industry involvement in UV14, to act as the facilitator, and offering relevant demonstrations of a joint ISR capability to the trial. The trial assessment is the other stream that I have, is to help to formulate the UV14 trial objectives. So that's in my interest to do that, because the objectives have to be measurable. Otherwise, it's not an objective assessment, it's a subjective one. Develop the trial assessment plan, leading the assessment itself, and then preparing the trial reports at the end. A NIAG study report and two specific trial reports. So Study Group 177 take us up through the preparation phase. There's a follow-on study which will be approved towards the end of this year, and that will take us right through until the end of the trial assessment writing. The UV14 demonstration piece goes through obviously until the trial, and the assessment goes right through to the end. There were the companies that were initially interested in Study Group 177. That number has reduced considerably, because we've heard about CWICS, which is very much come along and demonstrate your capabilities. What the sponsor is looking for UV14 is, if there's a GIS server, for instance, he only wants one server, and so a number of companies have dropped out because the systems have already been pledged by some of the nations. And the ones in red are ones that have joined in. And we started with 46 plus companies, we're now down to 23. We've got a very low budget. It really is just to facilitate introductions and engagement, but it's very much to the industries themselves to fund it. The second stage of the fund to be approved. It is a management challenge, and one of the things that is needed is national sponsorship or endorsement to participate or connect to the network. Some company representatives involved in UV14 assessment teams, so some of them have dropped out from actually presenting demonstrations, but they're going to be part of my assessment team. Okay, that's a very rapid run through, and I've tried to bring us up. So I can see people need coffee and they need a smoke break. So thank you very much.